Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast, where it's all about helping people and organizations unleash their greatness. The Zeducation Podcast features lively discussions.
When they share it, you see that they're beginning to feel empowered.
My heart, it's full of pride for me to be at Maitai Samoa.
You don't necessarily need a degree these days. There's so many pathways to success.
Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast. Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast, where it's all about helping you grow personally and professionally. This month, we're marking Movember, a time to bring men's mental health into focus. Mental health is deeply shaped by culture and community, and for Pacific communities, it's woven into traditions that carry both strength and silence. Today, we're honored to have Sione Finau with us. Sione is a passionate advocate for mental health, currently working with Standing Tall New Zealand to create accessible, culturally rooted support for Pacific youth and families. We will be talking about how understanding and embracing our unique cultural identities can lead to powerful healing and resilience. We will also talk about breaking stigma, finding strength, and building mental wellness in ways that are meaningful for everyone. So to get things started, we're just going to warm up and then we'll kind of get into the deep stuff. Yeah. But what is something interesting about you that people don't know? What do you reckon?
Collecting some indigenous artifacts. Which is cool. Was just gifted this just for this interview. So if I don't do too well, then at least I look good doing it. So, but yeah, I love collecting indigenous items. Have a few masks at home, and yeah, some Fijian spears. So yeah, I love collecting those items. And I have to thank Dr. Stevens II for that one. I think traveling around with him to the markets out in Avondale, see how he bargains and collects items. So I learned from the vest, and he's pretty good at it.
That is pretty cool that you get to collect awesome items like that. I mean, everyone's got their own hobbies and that, but that's really cool. I'm pretty keen to get into your journey of how you got into this space. What inspired you to get into like mental health or just healthcare and social services in general? Like, because you know, you're out of school, you've done all these qualifications and all these courses. Now here you are in this space. Tell us about that journey.
So when I left high school, I had plans to go to uni, but once high school ended, I pretty much kind of dropped the plans I made to work on going into construction. Back then, word of mouth was going around about going to Australia about mining, and this was before TikTok, so word of mouth was quite popular heading into mining. Shortly after leaving high school, I received a call from Uni Prep at AUT. It's one of the events for high school leavers. They mentioned if I could attend. I said that I wasn't interested in attending uni, and they said it's all good, just come for the experience. I did that. At the end of uni prep, they offered a scholarship, and at that time, gathered up my plans to figure out what I wanted to study, and sport and recreation was what I selected, and that was pretty much because I was only good at PE at the time in high school. During my studies at AUT, the opportunity came in to do a double degree with business. So I attended that one. My major with business was information systems. And it was just because the dude who was there selling the idea to me, and then I was sold. So I did that, finished in 2021. Yeah, leaving that, I struggled to find a job. A lot of the feedback from employers was you're not really someone we're looking for. We have other candidates with masters and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of rejections I got at the time. And a good friend of mine at the time had invited me to join one of the Pacific groups. And this was to help with the vaccination rates amongst Pacific people. And during that time, the Pacific group decided to head in a new direction, and I was keen on it, so I stayed. And in that time, I was kind of networking with people, seeing who was interested in working in collaboration with the group, and that's where I met Dr. Alexander Stevens II. So I met him at his PhD graduation, and this was in 2022. And what interested me to, I guess, engage with him and network with him was his PhD title. So at AUT, all the PhD graduates got their titles up on the screen. So his one, I only remembered e-health, Pacific and Māori, and that was all I remembered. So I sent him a LinkedIn request to see if we could network, and he found the engagement quite interesting because there wasn't a point where I mentioned sexual violence in the sort of engagement. And that's when I realized that his work was in regards to sexual violence. So we met up at Onehunga in a cafe, and we just started chatting. And then he sort of asked if I was interested in working in partnership. And then I was like, cool. He said, if you don't like the direction that we're going, or you find something else better, then that's good on me, and we'll kind of part ways. So that was 2022, and ever since then we've kind of just been working in collaboration. How I got into the sector was volunteering for his organisation, StandingTallNZ.org, and this is a organisation that started from his PhD in supporting Māori and Pacific males affected by sexual violence, and his PhD sort of had some findings in regards to a lack of support for many males in general, and specifically a lack of support for Māori and Pacific males affected by sexual violence. So working in collaboration with him, that's how I kind of started working in the space, and it incorporates mental health, addictions, and where I am, my studies led into, which is the postgrad diploma in mental health and addiction. So I just finished my last few assessments a couple of weeks back, and looking forward to graduating this December. So awkward coming from a sport and rec and business background, and then ending up working in the sort of mental health space, the health sector.
I don't think that's awkward, actually. When I got out of uni, I went to Unitech, and I did a bachelor's in product design. But high school, I was always had all this influence and voice saying, be an architect, as you grow up, especially for Pacifica. It's either rugby, sports, something in sports, or something to do with like architecture or design. That's what it felt like for me anyway, the world I grew up in. And I just struggled with it because I loved playing sports, but I couldn't see a future or a career in it. I couldn't see myself being All Black. And same with architecture. I wasn't as passionate about buildings like everyone else. Yeah. So where could I fit, right? And anyway, I struggled at Unitech, and a degree that should have taken me 3 years took me 4.5. And I think a part of it was I didn't really have a passion for it. But fast forward to today, I did a master's in marketing, and then here I am with my own business. So it has nothing to do with product design. Yeah. But that's what I've learned about your experience is like you had this idea with going to the mines and stuff influenced by people around you, word of mouth, but university played a big role in opening your eyes, opening your mind to other possibilities or other opportunities. Definitely. And that's what I love. And then you talked about attending other events, and then you network with other students or PhD candidates, etc. And then look at where you are today, partnership, you're in mental health, and now it's inspired you and influenced you to do your postgrad in mental health and addictions, right? Mm-hmm. So that's, I don't think there is a cookie cutter or that our journey is linear, like you should know what the path looks like. Sometimes you just got to try different things to get there. And I want our listeners to understand that. Like, there are multiple ways to reach your destination or success. There are multiple pathways to success. So, look, now you've been in this space, you know, you're passionate about it now. Tell us what you've learned, especially around mental health. What are Pacifica views, or people who are Pacifica, and what their views are on mental health? What are you learning in that space?
Yeah, in regards to Pacific people's perspectives on mental health, it varies. And I guess it's dependent on like generations and if they were born here or not. There's an interesting literature that suggests that those coming from overseas, or like the islands, are much more resilient in comparison though to those Pacific people that kind of born and grew up in New Zealand. And it's just because of the conflict with their identities, in terms of their cultural background, and then growing up in a sort of Eurocentric Western society and growing up in that environment. In regards to, mental health, there seems to be a lack of education for Pacific people, and I think there's a lack of resources or education that has some sort of cultural competency to teach Pacific people, or mental health in New Zealand may not reflect Pacific worldviews or Pacific cultural practices and how they perceive mental health.
It's quite interesting. So you're basically saying from research you've found that those who are coming from the islands to New Zealand, or who are born in the islands, coming to New Zealand, are more mentally and emotionally resilient than those Pacifica who were born and raised here in New Zealand. And a big part of that you're saying is because of cultural identity. So are you saying that like being born in Samoa Tonga in the islands, like they have strong values there, and there is no other, I wouldn't say conflicting values or culture. Like Samoan culture is Samoan culture. That's what you live and you breathe every day. You're going shopping, you're going to school. It's incorporated everywhere. That's the country you live in. Then you come into New Zealand. There's so much diversity here. And some people might say that's a great thing. That's a good thing, right? But what you're saying is amongst that diversity is also a bit of confusion around who am I? What are my values? What do I believe? What do I stand for? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, definitely. I think relating it to myself, when I was quite younger, it was the sort of neglect for my Pacific culture when I was quite young. Kind of regrets telling my parents that, I don't sort of believe or don't think the Tongan culture is important. And this was me when I was really young. Fast forward to now, I'm now studying a Pacific language course in Tongan language with MIT. So I finished that level 3 last year, and then currently doing the level 4. But something I learned in the level 3 was the values, and that was what helped me stay resilient in my journey this year. So something that happened to me this year is I moved out of home, studied full-time, worked full-time, and decided to pick up extra studies alongside my postgrad diploma. And in the level 3 certificate I did was learning about the values, and that was the whākawe i kaola, and that was the 4 golden threads. So the 4 values of Tongan practice, which is whakapapa, respect, mamahi mea, perseverance, loto tō, humility, and tauhiwa, which was nurturing relationships. And it's through learning those values and what it means to me is kind of what helped me this year and stayed resilient. So definitely Pacific values and understanding Pacific values, Pacific language, and like understanding who I am is how I got here at this point. Yeah.
See, what I love about that, Sione, is you're highlighting the fact that the more in touch we are with a cultural identity. So even though you were born here in New Zealand, or if you're born in Samoa, the root of it is cultural identity. your values, right? Like even I grew up, I was the same as you. I grew up and I was like, no, speak English, the palangi, that's the language, that's the culture or the values that's going to take you further in life in a career and that. And that my cultural values like Samoan and Tongan are the things that are going to hold me back. Whereas now it's like when you get older, you're like, actually, you know, I had it wrong this whole time. And now we're trying to make up for it and play catch up by flipping and be like, oh, you know, I've got to start learning the language. And sometimes, look, that's what we went through here in New Zealand growing up, both you and I, and we can relate to a lot of people here born in New Zealand. Like, that's the reality we grew up in. Well, we can't change that. It is what it is. We weren't born in the islands. We were born here in New Zealand. And there are pros for that as well. There's pros for that as well because we're exposed to diversity. We understand different people like that, right? But look, I think that's great advice for our listeners who are watching this. It's like, look, it's not too late. And one of the ways that you can help build mental resilience is going back to your culture, going back to your cultural values. What are they, you know, and your beliefs, and then bringing that forward into everything that you do. I love that. You know, I love that. I love just saying that like being more in touch with your cultural identity and staying true to your cultural values will help you be mentally and socially and emotionally resilient. I love that. What can you say around stigma? What are some misconceptions or confusions that people have around what mental health is, especially from Pacifica and how they look at mental health?
The stigma for our Pacific men is you got to be staunch. You got to stand strong. You can't have no sad feelings. Men don't cry. So those are pretty much myths. Because when these sort of stigma that puts in barriers for many of our Pacific males to sort of come forward and express emotions, and they sort of get laughed at or brushed off the shoulder and whatnot, it sort of leads into challenges with mental health concerns and pathways into addictions, pathways into crime, unfortunately, which can really be traumatic for many of our Pacific men. But our perception with in terms of stigma is just the lack and awareness of the impacts that how Pacific people are treating sort of the mental health within New Zealand. But I think the current generations are slowly catching on and they're more realizing the concerns we have around mental health.
Well, especially when you're starting to see the impact of how it's having on your children. Like you got children who are disengaged, unfortunately in extreme cases where children who take their life, you know, and sometimes that's the wake-up call or the trigger that get people like curious, like, okay, cool, what is this mental health thing? And now I can understand why, especially with your studies, with the correlation between mental health and addictions. And I don't know if you heard this recently in the radio and the media with Mike King. And his comments and how there's a lot of heat around what he said. And basically, just real quickly, I invite you guys to go and watch it for yourself and listen to it for yourself. But basically, the heat around it was he said something along the lines of alcohol is a solution for mental health. And I don't think he meant it the way that people think it is. I think what he's saying is people are turning to alcohol as a solution for dealing with their mental health, right? Because like they don't know what else to do or any other alternative or better solution, right? I think that's where he was coming from. But he also spoke from his personal experience where that was his go-to, that was his solution, that was his distraction or his coping mechanism with the mental struggles he went through was alcohol. And because he had that, it saved his life. That's where he's coming from. Like, it's better to have alcohol than it is to take your life when you're going through that. That's where he was coming from, in my opinion. Yeah. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Mike King sent out a second video going back to his comment, but I think sort of disagree with that comment, especially with, I guess that was his personal experience. So when you kind of just solely rely on alcohol as the solution, the thing is it just kind of builds and builds, and you're keeping things to yourself. And then what sort of happens is there comes a time where you get to a breaking point, and it's like alcohol can get you so far, and then what happens next? It's so coming from an aspiring drug and alcohol practitioner, is let's talk about other things as well. Like, have you considered exercise as a form of stress relief? Considered other things, maybe traditional healing. We understand that Indigenous people have their own practices. Māori have rongoa. Other solutions that don't have the same negative effects, negative impacts that alcohol can probably have on you. So I think there may be better solutions, but that's my king's experience. And he's I guess he's free to speak on his personal experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very sensitive topic, but it's also publicized. And, when you hear messages like that promoted or it can almost influence what people think and perceive about mental health as well. So it's just being mindful what's being shared as well, but also everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But let's stay on the topic of solutions, right? You mentioned exercise and that's cool, right? But what are some, especially from a Pacifica approaches around managing mental health? What is your thoughts on that? Are you seeing anything that's working for Pacifica when it comes to like building resilience and supporting their mental health? Or is there a gap there?
With Pacific mental health, and could be the case for Māori as well, it's such a complex case because to provide a solution, we have to sort of understand if needs are being met. So are they being given the proper housing? What sort of employment are they at? Are they receiving frequent income that's that many of the Pacific men are able to provide for their families, for their dad, like such the dads? So in terms of solutions for that, I think in a Pacific approach, it's much more holistic. So finance would be a pathway of exploring. Wealth is health. So something I heard back, I can't remember who said it, but wealth is health, and being able to financially support families. Because in a Pacific sort of approach, it's much more community rather than individualistic. So if you want to support our Pacific men, you got to consider a family approach. Are there, let's say an example is a Pacific dad, Māori dad, are there children's, are they going to school and whatnot, coming back home? Sports may be something to explore here. But again, it's quite a complex solution, and it's answering if their needs are being met and if they're able to explore what they want to achieve. So having ambitions would probably come much later, and that would be the solutions. If it's more it's them led, not really solution just provided by by government, if there's no consultation with many of the Pacific people or Māori. So that'd be my response to that question. Nice.
Yeah, you're right. And I've been in the game quite a while, working with a lot of Pacifica in the community, especially Māori, in the community, but also in the workplace. So I've got this well-rounded perspective on it. And what I've seen work is like what you've said, is the community-oriented approach or the family oriented approach if we go even more closer to the core. And we like, as Pacifica, we like to approach solutions from a community and a family-oriented approach. That's what I've seen work. Like you can't, and what you're highlighting is there's a lot of variables and a lot of things that influence someone's mental health. But what you're saying is, especially for Pacifica, what are things that we care about or things that we worry about? Let's sort that out before we talk about thriving. Let's talk about surviving. Let's talk about my family needs to be fed. I need a job in order to make that happen. We need roof over our head. We need clothes. My kids need to get to school. They need fees. There's just so many things to think about. Because that's how Pacifica, they're thinking about others. They're thinking about their family. And if they can't look after that, they don't feel like they have any purpose. Right? And so that's where you're coming from. And that's where people like government and community providers, people out there in the community doing amazing things, they come and support the family financially, food, providing stuff for the kids, you know. But then there's also the educational piece. What you're saying is not just giving them a fish, but training them how to fish.
Generations. And that's the only way that Pacific and Māori communities can sort of thrive, as if maybe in poverty, one person in the family decides to take up higher education and starts to think about the following generation, and then that may be with KiwiSaver might be a good example, and chipping in that 10%. So having something like that, and also continuing to save for your next of kin or whatever, and just think about the next generation, your kids moving forward.
So I'm keen to hear a little bit around what are your thoughts around how we can build more resilience in New Zealand? If you're a Pacifica that's born here in New Zealand and you're a parent that's got children born here in New Zealand, what can we do in the home as parents to help cultivate resilience for our children?
Yeah. In regards to a parent with your children, I guess in that topic is understanding that maybe your child has different experiences to what you have, and just consider if the solutions that you might give to your children is relevant or helpful. What may have worked for you during your time growing up may not work for your child in school now, because circumstances are kind of different at the moment. And the thing with Dr. Stevens II is since he's worked with a lot of people, he's put in the sector, he kind of knew how to work with me. And that's with like working with different people. And yeah, parents come with rich of experience, but being a parent is kind of hard. So there's those challenges. But in terms of what to do at home is being able to listen. So if you're just being able to listen, then they'll just start sharing with you, and whatever that may be, I guess it's a gift that they can share things with you comfortably, because it's not common amongst many of our Pacific families. So maybe that's my advice to parents.
It's quite interesting that you mentioned listening, because listening is one of the biggest things that we've identified. Working with clients, employers, is a skill that a lot of people are missing, especially leaders. Like if you think about it, when you grew up, were you told to listen or taught to listen? Right? Many of us were not taught, we were just told to listen. Right? I can't even remember even reflecting the last time I did a listening course or develop that skill. So all of us are growing up with this lack of ability to listen, or not being taught to listen properly, and then we're taking that into the workforce, we're taking that into our future marriages, we're taking that into the, So it's like, I like that. It's easier said than done, but I feel like because of that gap, we need to do something about it. And I think for parents, it's like maybe just not talk and just give them the space to speak.
Yeah, because children, they are growing people, from my understanding. They are going through new experiences that like we just find normal. They're learning how to think, they're learning how to walk. And giving them that time and space to just explore. And that's where, their children just come with creativity, and that's something you kind of need, in life, is creativity.
And I love how listening is the catalyst for that to happen. But coming back to our cultural values, as Pacifica, we want the best for our children. We want the best for the next generation. And if that's what you truly want, then listen. Listening is a powerful way or powerful tool or skill that we can develop to help make that happen, to make the next generation better. So I love that. I just want to bring it back to that. So we're getting closer to the end of our podcast, and there's been so much wisdom and so much knowledge that you've shared, and I just want to thank you so much for that. I want to come back to our learners, people who are thinking about, people who are wondering, what do I want to do for a career? What do I want to study at university? What's your word of encouragement or advice, or maybe to those to consider maybe exploring in a career, or a life in mental health and addiction? Why would it be an inspiring place to be in?
I think something I learned was going back to my Pacific culture. So understanding who you are and probably what values you stand on. That's something I kind of learned as I went throughout the course of this year and last year, and what I valued. If you kind of understand who you are, then you kind of know where you're going. Because going back to my undergrad years, I was just kind of going with the motion, because again, my perception was PE was probably the only subject I was good at, when in reality I should have explored more. I think people mistake their grades as a reflection of their competencies or their skills. And I think if you sort of perceive that way, then your first sort of challenge is yourself. So probably have a good look at yourself and understand, am I in the way of my own pathway? Am I being a barrier to my own progress? And that's something I learned this year, is always telling myself, I don't know about this. Is this even me? And bloody hell, taking on extra studies is just something I haven't done at all, and kind of just pushing myself. So you just have to understand if you as a person are just putting yourself down, and just having a look in your environment. Is your environment even something that's progressing and pushing you forward? But yeah, understanding who you are and understanding what's in your way, and if it's you, then probably reflect upon who you are as a person.
Nice. So that's some great general advice for everyone out there around, wondering what they want to do. Don't rush it. Take some time to explore, but also take some time to just try things. And don't think that's your final destination just because you want to study this course. Maybe you just want to study it because you're interested or you like the topic. Doesn't necessarily mean that you want to commit your whole life to it or career to it. So that's some great advice there. So less pressure. Don't put pressure on yourself around that, okay? And that's how Sione ended up where he is today. But can you just maybe share some final words around, your passion for this space and mental health, and talking to people out there? Why is it such a great space to be in? Why are you in here? And what kind of impact do you want to leave before you leave this planet?
So hopefully I would like to pursue further education, and what I'd like to do is encourage more Pacific people in the health sector. Regardless of what your upbringing was, there's always opportunities there for Pacific people, and also our Māori community as well. So don't sort of cut yourself short if you believe it wasn't for you. I mean, I barely did any health science courses in high school, so to do a health science degree now is pretty lost for words to express how much craziness it is for me to be here. But don't cut yourself short. I guess on the topic of men's health, if you are struggling with whatever you're going through, just know that there is support out there, and there's some resources out that you can find on the Mental Health New Zealand website. For many of our Māori and Pacific men affected by sexual violence, please look at StandingTallNZ.org. We have resources there that may support you. And if you do know anyone that may have been affected by sexual violence, please have a look at the website as well. That is StandingTallNZ.org. And yeah, that's me.
Love the final words of advice and also the call to action. If you're going through some sort of struggle, or if you know someone that's going through some sort of struggle, reach out for help. StandingTallNewZealand.org is also some good support there. Check out the website. Some good support there for Pacifica and also Māori men. So don't be afraid to check that out. But also, if you're keen to support men's mental health, especially this month being Movember, in November, please look at the description and look for the link where you can help donate towards our Movember initiative, which is also being supported by Zeducation. But again, Sione, thank you so much for your time, sharing your gift, your wisdom, your knowledge, and we're much better for it.
Thank you for having me. Aloha.